Don Fischer, the golden voice of the Hoosiers, here with us, and I'm sure he had a lot more fun this past weekend calling the game. Man, you were a lot busy. You had to have some lozenges with you on all those touchdown calls.
It was a fun night, no question about it. I don't like football on Friday night at the college level. I'd rather see high school football. But that said, we saw Indiana perform, I think, in just exactly the way we anticipated or hoped that they would. They dominated Indiana State from the very beginning of the contest. The second quarter, Tom was not happy with the defense, and it kind of had a lull there with the offense as well. But without question, it was a dominant performance. You put up 558 yards against anybody, you got to feel really good about what you saw. And the defense gives up only 93 in the ball game, only 10 yards given up in the second half. That's just a dominant performance, and you've got to feel really good about it from an Indiana perspective.
Yeah, those numbers, and I know that Indiana State they're not the same talent-wise, and they were hurting at quarterback, but still, it's a college level. I mean, this is not an FCS team. But just the play calling was fun. It was very encouraging to see the play calling because it was a variety and everything that we didn't see the week before, with quarterback being rolled out in the pocket, hitting guys in pattern, hitting running backs out in space early, getting the ball to Jalen Lucas outside of the tackle, and look what the hell he did. 2 touches and 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was magical and shows what he could do out in space. But they got the ball to Josh Henderson through the air and on the ground. So they really, really mixed it up, Don.
They did. It was a much different performance from an offense that we saw very conservative the week before. We've talked about this a lot in that you got 2 redshirt freshmen getting their first opportunity last week, the week before, I should say, and they just didn't get a chance to do very much. And what we saw on Saturday, I thought both quarterbacks looked good, but Taven Jackson really did a terrific job in his performance out there. I think most of us believe that he's probably going to be the guy that won the quarterback position, will get the start against Louisville. We'll see, but because there's still no announcement to that scenario, because Tom Allen wouldn't say after the ball game who it would be. They said they were going to go back and evaluate the film and take a look and make a decision. So we'll find out if they've looked at it up to this point, because we'll have a press conference later today to find that out. If, in fact, he's made a decision, I think he's made the decision. Whether he reveals it or not will be the question.
I think I agree with you. I think there's absolutely no doubt. Both quarterbacks played well. Brennan Sorsby comes in when Taven got hurt for a play, and they don't have him just hand the ball off. He drops straight back and throws what was like a 15, 17-yard strike, and then goes right back out. I agree. Taven's going to end up getting the start because of his performance. I don't know that it's quite fair, because Brendan had to start against Ohio State and go against that.
Right.
So I don't know that Indiana really has a difference between these 2 quarterbacks. I honestly am starting to think that one is not better than the other, but they have to choose one regardless. You can't have 2 guys going in and out. I mean, you can, but it's just best. You've got to get into the rhythm of the game, and I wish they would have done it before game 1 going into this game next, because Louisville coming up is a very, very important, and it's going to be a very tough challenge.
Well, there's no question Louisville has really looked good in their first 2 contests. They beat a good Georgia Tech team, I think 39-34, and then they just blew away Murray State 56-0 last week. They looked impressive. Jack Plummer, who was 3 years at Purdue under Jeff Brom, and then went to California last year and started out there, and now he's back with Brom again at Louisville. So he's a veteran quarterback. He knows the system that Brom runs, so there's nothing lost there with those 2 guys being back together again. And I think Louisville's talent level, especially offensively, is pretty special based on what we've seen thus far. Great receivers, really good running back. Jordan is terrific from what I understand. And I think this is exactly what I think Indiana needs right now to find out just where they're at, because Louisville is going to give them a challenge on both sides of the football. And I'm looking forward to seeing what Indiana's defense does in this game. If they can continue their terrific play up to this point, I say terrific. I'm talking about in comparison with years gone by here, the last couple of years prior to this year. Um, they've looked really good at this juncture. They continue to make plays. Uh, Philip, what am I spacing here?
Dunham.
Philip Dunham came up with a terrific interception in the end zone against Indiana State to keep them out, and the defense threw a shutout. And Jalen Lucas's fumble recovery for a touchdown, run back by the Bloomington South kid Blackwell, was a terrific play for them. Not a good one for Jalen, but the good news is the defense, the second half, gave up just 10 yards. So there's so much I want to see in this next ball game. I'm looking forward to this game more than any thus far out of their 3 ball games of the season, just because I think it's going to give Indiana a much truer evaluation of where this team is at.
Yeah, the advantage Louisville has, as you mentioned, Plummer. He threw for over 3,000 yards and like 26 touchdowns at Cal last year. That experience that he has and the familiarity with the offense, and they've been able to just continue working on that for the first all fall and throughout these 2 games. So they're ahead in that regard. Indiana is just a little bit behind, but hopefully they can continue what they showed yesterday. And Indiana's defense is going to have to step up. There has been some concern with the secondary. They looked pretty good against Ohio State in the first game. Ohio State a little shaky. They're definitely going to get tested against Louisville, and that is going to be the difference for me in that game, is whether or not Indiana's secondary can step up and maintain things. And in addition to getting to the quarterback, you don't have to sack him, but you got to pressure him.
Right. I think that's the key. We still haven't seen as much pressure on the quarterbacks at this point as I would like to see. I don't know if Indiana has shown as much at this juncture of what they're capable of doing with some blitzes and those kinds of things. Right now, I would say there are question marks on Indiana's football team in a lot of respects. Certainly from an offensive standpoint, you're going to go up against a defense that's pretty doggone good, even though they did, I guess Louisville gave up 34 points to Georgia Tech in that opener. So that may say that the Louisville defense may not be on the same par as their offense is, but their offense is really good. And there's no question that the Indiana's defense will get another really difficult challenge here. And then can the offense pick up where they left off this past week and build on what they've accomplished in that game against Indiana State? And I don't expect them to get 500 yards in the ball game against Louisville, but I want to see how competitive Indiana can be offensively, because I think the biggest question on this football team is on the offensive side of the ball. And that's where the challenge that Louisville will give Indiana this week may tell us.
Yeah, and this game is I keep saying this game's so important because before the season, I was not confident that Indiana had what it would take to make a bowl game, to win 6 games this year. If they beat Louisville, that completely changes for me. And I will then think that not only do they, I would expect them to win the 6 games and make a bowl game, because if they do that, they will have really gotten over a big hurdle, and they would have had to show great improvement. And I've watched Illinois. They haven't looked great. Teams that are on Indiana's schedule, that all of a sudden Michigan State, and I'm like, man, there are more wins here now all of a sudden, but it all hinges on this Louisville game.
Very much so. I mean, that's what you feel. I mean, it's a long season. Lots of different things can happen. And one of the things that happened in the Indiana game on Friday night against Indiana State is they had 2 receivers go down, or at least were injured and did not come back into play. E.J. Williams went out fairly early. Cam Camper went out fairly early. But Omar Cooper stepped up, and he was spectacular in his performance. And I've seen this kid in 2 seasons now in fall camps. I've thought, man, this kid really looks good. And last year we didn't see him at all. I mean, I think he may have gotten in a ball game, but he was classified as a redshirt freshman coming into this season. I didn't see him in the first game. He didn't play, I don't think. Maybe got in for one play or something like that. And then this past week, he comes in, Cam Camper goes out, and you didn't lose a thing with Omar Cooper in the ball game, which really impressed me. He stepped up and played terrific.
Yeah, Indiana definitely has the pieces on offense. And that's another thing I've been saying. James Evans, a punter, he is such a valuable weapon. This dude has got a cannon in his leg, and he is booming these kicks. Very important for Indiana for field position and things of that nature. He's performed well early on, so that's also a great sign to get these put together. One horrible sign, and I know Casey Teagarden took a ripping from Tom Allen because of the 7 penalties. 6 were on the special teams, 2 of which were just, I'm sorry to say it, idiotic, running into the punter. Now, one of them may have been a little iffy, but there were just a couple of them that just looked like dumb penalties.
Well, and the week before they had several special teams penalties as well. So that's why Casey's having some problems right now with his group, because they had too many penalties in the first ball game. So, yeah, there's no question the special teams and James Evans, before we go any further with that, James Evans has gotten better. He looked like a fish out of water his freshman year. I mean, he was doing things. He had never kicked in a college football game, never saw a college football game. He's from New Zealand and just came out of that kicking camp in Australia and basically was just learning what college football was all about and looked that way. Last year, he was much better, very steady, did a nice job of placing the ball. This year, he's banging the football. He is knocking it down the field. He is a true weapon. And I've talked about this, and people know that have followed Indiana for very long. When they listen to Don Fischer, he wants to know how good the punter is, because I ask every coach the same thing. And Tom Allen and I have talked about this, and he agreed with me, because Kevin Wilson, and no knock on Kevin Wilson, but Kevin Wilson wouldn't scholarship a player at the punting position. He wanted guys that would walk on and punt for him, and that's what he got, guys that weren't as good. Tom Allen went and got scholarship guys at the punting position, and they've gotten better, and James Evans is proving to be everything we thought he would be when he got here, but obviously he was too young and a little bit too nervous in his first couple of years to do what he's doing now, but we've got him for another year after this one. That's the good news.
Well, not only is he scholarship putters, he's scholarship to the long snapper. And that might be the only school in the country that does that. I mean, it's crazy. He wants the special. That's why he knows how important special teams are, right. And to a team like Indiana, who has a smaller margin for error in games. So you have to be as good as you possibly be on every discipline.
No question. Special teams are a huge part of football. And they don't get the recognition, but take a look at what Jalen Lucas did last year, kept Indiana, or actually helped win a couple of ball games last year with what he could do on special teams. And he continues to be a weapon that people have to prepare for. And without question, he's one of the more dynamic players on this Indiana football team.
Yeah, and I think we saw exactly how they need to use him on those first 2 runs where he scored from 25 yards out. They were nothing but he just had a seam between the tackle and the end, and man, he's got this little move where he hesitates, and if the defender hesitates, it's over. He is gone, and he will get around you in a bat of an eye.
Yeah, he's special. There's no question about it, and I love Josh Henderson as well. I just think that guy plays so hard. He rarely loses a yard. I mean, it's almost never that he go backwards. He always goes forward. He's a terrific between the tackles runner. And Christian Turner gives you a little bit of both Jalen Lucas and Josh Henderson. And Trent Howland, he is a kid that is 6'3" and 240 pounds. I mean, this guy is a load. And if he gets more playing time, and he can catch the ball too. So I think they've got a really good running back room, a great receiving room. And obviously the quarterbacks looked so much better last week. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm just so excited about this game against Louisville because I wish we were playing at Bloomington, to be quite honest with you.
Yes.
But nevertheless, it'll be exciting for these players playing in an NFL stadium. I guess that's a big part of it. I don't know what the crowd's going to look like. I've not heard anything about ticket sales for this ball game, but honestly, playing Louisville, the test that Indiana, I think, really needs, and if they can win that ball game, you talk about a confidence level boost that's going to be.